The magnitude 7 earthquake rocked the poorest, most disaster-prone nation in the Western Hemisphere.
This is going to be a catastrophic disaster.
Focus shifts from search and recovery to making sure the people who survived Tuesday's earthquake survive the aftermath.
Come with me over here to give you an idea of what's happening.
It's hard for me to believe still that Haiti was over 12 years ago now.
It's where you and I met.
They say hey you and I say hey you back. Hey you. You're just the age of my daughter.
Sean Penn, a bona fide movie star with a film career spanning 4 decades, is there with me in the rubble.
This was a river all by itself at that time. Then it would flood over, go right through the bottoms of these tents.
Haiti is also where he met Ann Lee, who already lived and worked there, one of the poorest countries in the world, years before the devastating earthquake.
Very quickly, Ann became my mentor in that world of development and disaster relief.
Ann already had years of experience managing large-scale humanitarian responses.
How did that first interaction take place?
With so much love.
I think significantly in most people's minds in Haiti at the time, the actor who, what the hell was he doing here and what was he gonna have of value added? I would say no one or no face I saw in those early days occupied more skepticism than the one sitting next to me.
Do we have the baby number posted anywhere?
I was skeptical because we had seen so many people fly down, take photos, and then leave. And it was really disheartening. But this one stayed and was in a tent for 9 months, you know, right on the place where we had 60,000 people displaced.
I'll admit, my idea was to be there for 2 weeks. The next thing I knew, I was in the tunnel of a railroad track with a train coming, and I just couldn't get off.
He comes in as an outsider and he came and said, why aren't we bringing people outside of the camp and returning them back home? You know, I have this idea, it's like the greenhouse. I was like, what the hell is this greenhouse approach? But it was genius. It was essentially, how do you attract people to go back home?
That's the priority, to be able to do that, to provide clinics and education and hopefully ultimately jobs.
From there, it was a huge amount of collaboration and scheming to make things happen together.
Born in Haiti, Sean and Ann co-founded CORE, a nonprofit which stands for Community Organized Relief Effort, a team of 1,500 staff and volunteers with one mission: bring immediate aid and recovery efforts to underserved communities across the globe.
I had a great teacher who told me in junior high school, the rugged individualists are all either dead or in prison. The rest of us are out here trying to work with each other.
You've got to work with each other. How does it work between you guys and at CORE? You're watching something on TV, it's unfolding. What happens next?
Well, usually either Ann will get a text from me or I'll get a text for Ann, and it'll have the name of a place that likely we both would have heard is suddenly in some kind of immediate peril that we feel our skill sets as an organization would be adaptable to.
CORE's skill sets have been adaptable, time and time again.
Hurricane Matthew battering the Florida coast with 120-mile-per-hour winds.
Florence is far from done with this area and with much of the area surrounding us.
Puerto Rico pummeled by Hurricane Maria, which made landfall as a Category 4 storm.
Some of the nation's largest cities warning of being overwhelmed by coronavirus, a wave of new cases, and a critical shortage of supplies.
When it came to COVID in the United States, we sat down, it was July of 2020, and you were ramping up testing sites.
We need to have a huge volume of people tested, and trying to rely on the existing infrastructure is just not possible.
Now more than 6 million tests have been administered. Ramped up vaccines when vaccines were available. Now close to 3 million vaccines have been administered through CORE in the United States and around the world. We spend $4 trillion a year on healthcare in the United States, and yet we needed CORE to come fill the gaps. What should people take away from that?
It's scary. We've always focused on the reality that Every disaster is really just uncovering the long-term disaster that's been sitting there, and that social inequality. They're at the heart of everything that we do. Just watching what's happened in our lack of healthcare systems, and even now, there's still neighborhoods where we're covering the cost of the uninsured to get tested.
For Sean and Ann, crises know no bounds, whether it be an earthquake, a hurricane, a global pandemic, or a war.
The fate of Ukraine is being decided right now. Russian forces gathering for what is now expected to be an assault on the capital.
In the case of Ukraine, as in the case of Haiti initially, it was us coming and saying, hey, we think we can help. Right now, they're in the fight of their life.
Since Russia invaded Ukraine on February 24th, CORE has placed their resources in neighboring countries. In order to respond to the critical needs of those fleeing, CORE set up teams in Poland and Romania. They offer urgent goods, such as cash assistance, food, hygiene kits, and baby supplies.
Do you think of your work as heroic?
I think that I have gotten to have a front row seat to what heroism is. When I was walking back over the border after the trip during the invasion into Poland, and almost every car that was lined up, and almost every adult person was a woman with one or multiple children who had no interest in leaving their husbands, who both by choice and also by mandate had to stay in the country from 18 to 60. You know, what's a hero? I've never felt particularly brave in my entire life, but you know, if your eyes are open, if your heart's open at all, boy, it's not hard to find it in this world.
Sean and Ann have found more heroes. They lie in the hundreds of CORE staff and volunteers, also on the front lines.
And we saw that in COVID, when we started, we didn't know how scary or how bad it was, and we never had a shortage of volunteers who wanted to put on that crazy hazmat with the goggles, gloves, and everything, not knowing what that meant, how much they would be exposed if they would get sick, what that would mean, bringing it home to their families. We never had a shortage of people who came to raise their hands to say, I'm in this. We're gonna do this.
Enjoy the rest of your day, man.
The young leaders that came up and became, you know, the cutting edge of CORE, we watched people learn that they matter, that they can make a difference. So I hope to be proudest of what we built, and that in the next 10 years, I'm going to be watching some of those people become senators and other things that might matter more. Senators are going to have to learn how to work with each other, but these guys already do.